What's up, BookTube? It's Monty, and today I'm back, and we're going to be talking about The Wicked King by Holly Black. There will be minor spoilers for The Cruel Prince in the first part of this video, as this is the second book in a series. When I start talking specifically about The Wicked King, then the thing will go up over in this corner. I think that's usually where it goes, where it says like spoilers, so you'll know. It won't be a mystery. This book sets, I don't know why I'm using that word. This book starts off 5 months after the events of the first book, so we have Cardan in his new role as High King, Jude as his most senior advisor. There's a name for it, but I couldn't tell you what that shit is. And the plot really is focused on Jude ensuring that nothing is going to remove Cardan from his role before she's ready to, bring in and swoop in and replace him with Oak. And the plot is actually really fucking boring. For most of the book, it doesn't really feel like anything is going on, even when things are, like when she's going to meet with Baelkin, or when she's finding out about the Underseas plans, to like what's going on there. It never really felt like the stakes had been raised that anything was actually like of dire importance. It didn't really work for me. I think what bothered me the most was the Cruel Prince did a shit job. I think everyone universally acknowledges this at world building. It expected you to come in with a lot of fairy knowledge, and it wasn't going to give you anything more. It gave you a little bit of like how to avoid a fairy charm, but that's literally it. And I feel like because this book centers mostly on potential attacks to Cardan's rule as High King, that the fact that it couldn't be bothered to flesh out the world didn't work, because you didn't have a sense of who these factions are. Like, when you have the Undersea, I think they were fucking mermaids, I don't know. When you have them, like, being, like, painted now as sort of, like, the antagonist of this novel, then you have to work at fleshing out who the Undersea are. We got vague motivations, but it was just generic, like, power grab of a young, inexperienced ruler, so nothing interesting or dynamic there. And so when you have, like, these things and these factions, like, you have to develop them. And so the fairies were underdeveloped, the mer people were underdeveloped, and so them going at it was boring as fuck. There was a little bit of, like, double crossing that happened towards the end of the book that I didn't care about. I didn't think it was either instance of it was all that good. Like I said, the plot doesn't really do anything. It does a lot of circling. There were a lot of conversations being had between Jude as the high advisor person and these other people that I felt we already had in The Cruel Prince, or we already had in this book, and like they would just have the same conversation a second time just for funsies. There was a moment There's a moment with Cardan's tale that I think is pretty infamous at this point, that in the larger context of the story makes no fucking sense. It just felt like it came out of fucking nowhere, and just like the rest of their romance, not here for it. I don't think this book did anything to develop their relationship, not only as a romance, but just as people. Like, even as like High King and High Advisor, I felt that relationship wasn't explored. Like, the plot didn't go anywhere. We kept having the same conversations, and then the dynamics between the characters didn't change or progress, or they weren't interesting for the most part. We'll get into some things in the spoiler discussion, but the character dynamics did not evolve or grow between the course of these two books. So, where in the first book, the character dynamics were really what pulled me in. And to be fair, after reading this, I think I would give The Cruel Prince 3 stars, because I don't think it's fair for me to have them both as 2 stars, because I did not like this one nearly as much as I liked The Cruel Prince. So there's that. The book really suffers from not describing literally anything. I have a really good idea of what Jude is wearing most times, what other people are wearing a lot of the times. I have a really solid understanding of what the furniture looks like, but not the grander room, not anything around them, and only small things. Like, never the whole room, but there'll be like a mirror in that room, or the ceiling in that room, or there's a couch in that room. Never like a full picture of what I'm looking at. I didn't understand it when I was into the ocean, and I didn't understand it when we were in the fairy world. I felt that every location in this book is described so poorly that you get like bare bones. It's not a full white room. It's like a beige room. Like a beige living room. Like that's what it is. Like I have the idea of what is meant to be in this location, but I never understand everything. And then I don't usually understand how we're getting from location A to location B. Like we'll start chapters in one place and another chapter will happen and it'll be somewhere else. Or we'll get like a vague thing of like we got onto the flying ponies or whatever and we got there. Like just the bare minimum. And I feel like that's just not working for me in a fantasy series. But the Cruel Prince had those character dynamics I thought were really interesting. Maybe because we were getting to see them for the first time. But this one doesn't do anything with them. So we have a lackluster plot that I think stalls, just like the first one had a lackluster plot. I mean, that one had like a moment where the book pivoted, and this one tried to have a moment where the book pivoted, but I didn't think the pivot was as strong because the pivot demanded that there be strong world building, unlike the pivot of The Cruel Prince. So that's all I have to say without getting... I still recommend it. I'm still going to continue on with the series, but I feel like this one definitely suffered from that like middle book in a trilogy syndrome. I don't think this is going to be a trilogy. I think this is a series. Now we're going to get into spoilers. So if you haven't read the book, thanks for coming. You're welcome to stay, but don't come at me in the comments saying I ruined the book for you. The thing that really bothered me, like I said, was the world building. And I think the part of the book where it wanted to pivot, like the tournament in the first one, was when Jude is taken captive by the Undersea Queen in exchange for something. And I feel like it just didn't work for me because I didn't understand how Jude was breathing underwater. I didn't understand if there was like, if she was, I knew she was under the sea, like I knew she was in the ocean, but I didn't know if it was like an air pocket thing going on or if it was just regular water and there was a castle under the water. Like, you know what I mean? Does that make any sense? But I didn't understand when she was in the mermaid palace, like what was going on there. I didn't think that it made any fucking sense for Cardan to agree to have the sea just wipe out a whole court of fairies over Jude, because their relationship, as I think I said this time if I didn't, their relationship was not established or expounded upon at all. So the idea that he would just allow people in his rule to be killed for her, I was like, bitch, where? Where the text is that supported? Okay, so if the angle's a little off, it's because I had to stop recording because the heater kicked in and it was way too fucking loud. So if the angle is different, that's why. Back to what I was saying. I didn't think that Cardan allowing for the court of termites or whatever the fuck it was to be wiped out or for some of them to die or whatever, it made any logical sense. And personally, I never understood their weird little connection that they seem to have in that book and again in this one, because like again, it just, they don't fit to me. And that's fine, because to me, Cardan is not a love interest. He is a means to an end. He is an instrument in Jude's arsenal. Now, my girl Taryn. I finished this book for Taryn. I read The Cruel Prince for Taryn. Now that's a little bit of an exaggeration. There were other things that I enjoyed about this that I wanted to know, well, that I wanted to see happen. But my girl Taryn, this is my favorite character. Favorite character is Taryn. Because I think that she makes sense. I think that Jude makes sense as well. I think her motivation is perfectly valid. I think it makes sense for her to want to find power in a place where she's been powerless. I mean, again, if you watch my Cruel Prince review, I think that it doesn't make any fucking sense that if you can procreate with the fucking fairy, then you need to have some kind of power, like inherently. Like, I think the humans should be able to do some kind of magic. Like, that does bother me. Like, just saying, if the fairy can knock you up, that means you're genetically similar. Something in you needs to be magical. Just saying. That's just me personally. Obviously, Miss Holly Black does not agree. But for Taryn, she doesn't want the same thing that Jude wants, okay? We met Jude wanting to be a knight, and then she couldn't be a knight. She decided she was going to level up and be a motherfucking queen. And you know what? She played the game real cute in The Cruel Prince. She did that. She did that. She schemed her way, and what did she become? A motherfucking queen. So good for her. But Jude is not about that life, okay? Jude just wants to be as inundated and assimilated as she possibly can be. And so that means finding a fairy. That means getting married to a fairy, have a nice little fairy babies, okay? Okay. Now we also have seen that Taryn and Madoc have a different relationship than Jude and Madoc. Again, because the story is from Jude's perspective, I think that that's a little bit skewed. So, you know, there aren't a lot of moments that we just see Taryn and Madoc. I have not read The Lost Sisters. It has been brought to my attention that I need to read it. I have it on hold at the library. Even though it's only like 50 pages, people are taking their sweet time. I probably won't do a review of that book, but I have been made aware that this is a thing that exists in the universe. I don't think the Madoc and Taryn's relationship is going to be touched on in that novella, but, you know, we'll see what happens when we see what happens. That said, I think that for Taryn to align herself with Madoc makes sense to me. Because her and Jude don't want the same things. Taryn wants security and she wants assimilation, and so Madoc is the only sort of stable person that's been in her life, because it's been very clear since The Cruel Prince, when their little rift started, when Taryn didn't defend Jude from getting drowned in the river or whatever that stupid shit was, there has been a rift, and that rift has built with the Locke situation from the first book that, again, I thought was dumb as fuck, because, again, Jude did not want that fairy dick. His is the right fairy dick because his ass doesn't have a tail. So just saying, if you're fucking a fairy, you should fuck the fairy that doesn't have a tail. The fairy with the tail is too close to a regular animal. Like, that's just not cute. I digress. So they had that rift. The rift continued to build because they're not talking to each other. They're not communicating in any kind of like beneficial way to work through this shit. Fine. We get to the wedding. Jude is still being petty as fuck. She can't even admit that her sister looks nice in a wedding dress. She's like, she looks like a fucking sacrificial animal. And I thought that was real shady. That was real shady, and Jude did not need to go there. But you know what? She had her feelings. She expressed her feelings. Good for her. Well, she didn't really express them. They were her thoughts. Still. So they have this rift that they've never really gotten over. They've never really addressed it. They just kind of, like, awkwardly live their lives around this rift. So at the end of the day, when Madoc, who has been there for her through all of this, who has, again, been the person that's raised her, even if he was also the person that murdered her parents, for me, it makes sense for Taryn to support him, for Taryn to impersonate her sister, to then have Madoc released from his vows to the crown. I don't know if this was a necessary plot element, if I needed this to happen. I'm not going to say that it's beneficial to the story overall, but I will say is that when that shit happened, for the first time in damn near 300 pages, something interesting happened. Some character was doing something that I was invested in, and so you know what? I was here for it, because Jude had a lot of time. Jude had a lot of time to do stuff, and she didn't do anything as far as I was concerned. She talked to Balekin for a little bit, then she met Cardan's mother. She talked about her mother for a little bit. Then Cardan's mom randomly appeared at a fucking ball or some shit, and that was like totally not important. Then she went and got kidnapped. There was a whole point where they didn't make any sense. Literally, Jude did nothing of interest to me personally. Other people, feel free to disagree, for damn near 300 pages. So when Taryn popped up and was backstabbing and conniving, I was here for it because I felt that it fit her character and I got something interesting. I got 2 for the price of like 3 pages, and it was all that I needed. All that I needed. Again, I don't know if that really serviced the story in any kind of meaningful way. It hasn't really established Taryn outside of these people in her life, and that I do have an issue with that. I don't think that Taryn is granted the same agency as Jude, because Taryn is always doing things seemingly for other people, from wanting to be the perfect person for Ariana, to wanting to appease Locke and prove that she can be like them, to wanting to appease Matic. Like, everything she does so far in this series has been done for other people, even if it is a product of her assimilation and wanting to fit in Fairy in a way that I think Jude doesn't really want. Like, I don't think Jude wants to fit in. She likes being the person that goes against the grain, which is fine in a main character. You know, you want someone interesting to read about, but I don't think Jude was that person. I don't think anything she did was interesting. And so, while I can understand that people would like sisters and siblings to get along and to have a nice relationship, for me, it wasn't as important. I didn't care if these sisters ever got along again. To me, personally, it's not important for the twins to really be best friends. Again, it's personal taste. I understand that no one is ever going to love Taryn the way that I love Taryn. And I think that Cardan also got the real shit into the stick in this, because he was gone for most of the Cruel Prince, and most of what he did in this book was inconsequential. I don't understand why these titles keep referring to him, because I feel like he is such a bit player in these books. Like, I just don't understand. I need him to be more important. But I think what really bothered me was at the end of the book, and I think I talked about this already, so if I have, this whole section is going to get cut out. But this goes back to the world building. I still understand the extent of this magic system. So, even if humans are humans, they can't do any magic, even though they're having fairy babies, I don't understand why every time, literally every time, Jude has been injured. In the first book, when she stabbed her hand to prove that she could be good to Dane, and this one when she got an arrow shot in her thigh and then proceeded to run through the woods and continue on with her action sequence. I'm sure that's totally possible, but you literally just got shot with a fucking arrow, and you're running. Okay. Their solution to all of these injuries is to put fucking moss on it. But at the end of the book, you had Cardan literally lifting Earth out of the sea. Literally making a whole new fucking island. There ain't no healing. There's no healing potions. They don't have no healing spells. She could just create fucking islands literally out of nowhere, never having practiced it. He was just like, let there be island. And there was a fucking island. But moss... Again, it goes back to the world building. Again, I'm not a fan. I don't like it, and I'm not here for it. I think that is everything that I have to say about this book. If you've read this book, please leave your comments down in the comment section. I would love to have a conversation. You can DM me on Twitter or something if they're more spoilery and you don't want to ruin it for people. That's fine. But yeah, I'd love to have a discussion. So let me know what you thought about the book in the comments. I already said that. We're repeating now. I'll see you again when I see you. But until then, bye.